Yep. All right, guys, we're live here, and this is Dan Bidondi for the Dan Bidondi Show on TruthRadioShow.com. Excuse a little ghetto rig, but we had a problem getting these guys on through Facebook because it's giving us a problem for some reason. So somehow, somewhere, we had to rig the whole thing. So Wendy, how you doing? Thanks for joining us, and we had to do a little ghetto rig here to get both my guests on at once because Facebook likes to give a problem. So anyway, today we're going to be talking about spiritual warfare and how the man on the right, you can't see his face, he was a spiritual target. He suffered sleep paralysis, doing occultic research, and his apartment was broken into. They stole all his stuff, his weapons and everything else too. And the guy with the cool mask, we're going to call him Leo. And the guy on the right we're going to call Jake. And we're keeping their identities safe because of their jobs and their livelihood, so they don't be harassed or anything else like that. So let's get started. Today's December 3rd now. It's past midnight, December 3rd of 2018. And let's get going. And first, Leo, if you want to give a quick intro of yourself.
Yeah, I'll do a quick positioning of myself and who I am. I can't really give my information out there. Just to kind of give you an idea of who I am, I basically work within the film industry. And as you guys know out there, Hollywood is left-leaning, and a lot of times very extreme left ideologies are produced from Hollywood. So being in that position and wanting to stay and getting paid, pay my bills, but still have some kind of way to express myself in politics and what I believe, I have created this silly mask that says neither red nor blue. And as you can see, there's a donkey and an elephant both crossed out. And that's because, it's to express the negativities that come with the paradigm of the Democrats versus Republicans, red versus blue, donkey versus elephant. That just isn't work. Keeps us separated constantly. And remember, people, as long as we're divided, have us conquer. United we stand, divided we fall. So if they can keep pushing this, this paradigm towards us that, Republicans should be against Democrats, liberals should be against conservatives, we're losing. As long as we keep fighting each other, we're losing the fight. Now, I know Dan and myself both have slightly leaning right ideologies, and that's fine, but basically Dan and I think, can agree that we're basically just playing their game so that we can kind of slow down the progression of the New World Order and, just kind of keep things in the people's favor. So that's who I am in a nutshell. I don't want to take up too much time positioning myself on this video cast, but I wanted to be able to be on this show with Dan and co-host a little bit and hopefully give this targeted individual victim here a little bit of time on the air, and people who are suffering from being targeted individuals can maybe get some help from this video. Maybe it'll help them a little bit. Thanks, Dan.
Yep, I like the mask, man. That's great.
Thank you.
And Jake, which we're going to call him Jake, again, to keep these guys' identities safe because of their jobs and their livelihood. That's why we're doing a little masquerade in here. And Jake, if you want to give a rundown of yourself without, revealing your identification.
Yeah, I've been targeted for over about 2 years now, and my apartment, like Dan said, my apartment was recently broken into, and before that, there were also little stuff that I would notice. I would get home, doors would be unlocked, I would leaving to work in the morning, car door would be unlocked, or sometimes the door would be open, get in the car, and then the e-brake would be lifted up or something, and or come home off of work, and then doors would be locked and everything, and stuff would be moved around the apartment. Stuff would be not where I left them. And then recently, like Dan was saying, firearms were stolen. All my research and stuff was stolen. But yeah, so it's been going on for, I believe it's been going on longer than 2 years, but it wasn't until about 2 years ago that I started finding out about other targeted individuals and the stuff they were going through and how I was experiencing the exact same things.
Yeah, it's amazing. Plus, he's also going to be talking about too his experiences with sleep paralysis. We're going to get into that as well, because that's it's an epidemic. I mean, it's an untold epidemic that's going on, not just in the country here, but all over the world. And again, this goes on to spiritual warfare. All this has to do with spiritual warfare, actually. And but first of all, before we get into that stuff, basically, what kind of research were you doing? Like, in detail, what kind of research were you doing? And you told me you had pinups on the wall with lines drawn and all that stuff. And
yeah, well, I started finding into all these conspiracy theories and stuff, these small little ones that mostly everyone researches into. And then I started getting more into researching into the occult and how it's all connected.
Yeah.
And also in the town I live in, there's a lot of lodges here. And we have the Scottish Rite Lodge, we have all the Lions Club, we have Mason lodges here. And so I started looking into a lot of the clubs that we have here in the town, and I became friends with someone, and then it wasn't until a few years later I ended up finding out his whole family and even him were a part of the lodge. And it was after I had found that out about them, that's when I started to notice a lot of the weird stuff starting to happen. And that was when I started picking up on the targeting that was happening. And I would even it started to feel like everyone was involved in it too.
Yeah.
Because it is the small town too, at that. And it was I would go somewhere and everyone knew exactly who I was, and everyone would start staring at me, or it was just everyone would act different. As soon as I walked into the room, everyone's personality and everything would change. But yeah, I started researching into a lot of the occult after that, and finding out how the Mason lodges are into the occult and stuff, and how they they mess with witchcraft and stuff. And I was telling you that other day, I dated this one girl for, it was about a year, and then it was a few years later I ended up finding out she was into witchcraft and stuff. And it was a little bit after that, that was when all this really, really weird stuff started going on. I told you, there were times where I would find burn marks on me, or scratches and stuff. There were even times where I would wake up and there would be salt in the bed. And then I started looking into that, and then supposedly that's a lot of them trying to do some type of hex or curse on you. And that involves, they do you'll start finding salt and different insects everywhere. And I'm a very OCD person too. I like to keep everything clean. And that was one thing I started noticing too. There were these little gnats and bugs always popping up everywhere. And I'm a very clean person, so I'm constantly cleaning my apartment and stuff. There's no way there should be any insects or bugs, and nor has there ever been for the past 2 years before it started. And out of nowhere, they just started popping up everywhere constantly.
Well, that's a sign too of many demonic activity. Always relates to some kind of nasty gnat or flies. A lot of them too, and a lot of people reported stuff like that, and I've seen it myself over the years. And so those manifestations happen during when there's demonic or evil unclean spirits present, and that's their way of manifesting too. It's very detailed what goes on with that stuff. But so basically, you got involved with the wrong woman, and she probably tried to put these incantations on you and everything else, being a witch and all that. And basically what happened was like they opened some kind of a gateway or a doorway per se, like a stronghold on you, and that's how you became the spiritual target and all that. And also you doing the research and other targets, they don't want people knowing this stuff. So people who are low profile, that are not on TV, nothing, they love to attack. They'll break into people's homes, and thank God you're still alive, because a lot of people always turn up dead. Looks like a suicide, but it's not. And
yeah.
I did have something else too, and the other thing, because Jake, you and I were talking the other day too, and I think it was part of another conversation we had, was that she's not the only one, right? I mean, it seems like other that have come
literally after her.
Yeah,
like every single one after her, like, was involved in the craft somehow, and like she was the only one that actually like told me, and a lot of the other ones I ended up finding out from like their friends, or ended up like one chick, I ended up finding some stuff like in the closet that she had put there, and it was like some weird like doll thing. I don't know what the hell it was, but like it was weird. I ended up throwing it out, and it popped up a few times after I threw it out. And what do you call it? But yeah, like after her, there was like it even almost seemed like as if they were all like working together somehow. Like
right,
they always where I was, or like even her, she was always popping up everywhere.
And that's a common theme. That's a common theme that we see from targeted individuals, is the other influences come into your life, and they work their way into your life, but they're actually all working in collusion with each other to try to work their way in. The reason I think Dan would agree is because spiritually, not physically now, spiritually, they knew that you would mature into a believer, and they wanted to block you from getting to that maturity of knowing the existence of these individuals and knowing ways to fight it, and also to prevent you from warning others of that evil within this world. So I just want to hit home with that. The other thing you were talking about too was that apparently you had found fruit with blood in it, which is also a voodoo thing. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, there were like multiple times those where I went to the kitchen, and because I used to be vegan too, so I was eating nothing but like fruit and vegetables. And I grabbed like a peach, bit into it, and it literally tasted like iron, like blood. And I spit it out like immediately, and I like look at it, and it looked like it was like injected with blood. I like pulled out all the fruit that I had in the fridge, started cutting them open, and every single one was like that.
Yeah, that's definitely a sign of like some, voodoo type rituals they do in witchcraft, and which voodoo is, and people need to understand, voodoo is just an African version of witchcraft. That's all it is, and very evil one at that. And here in like the North Americans, they practice with their stuff is called North American voodoo, and witchcraft it's all the same stuff but different versions and different beliefs and whatnot, but it's all witchcraft in general. And the blood ritual things are huge, especially they wanted to ingest it.
I think too, you're an Italian American, so I think you can even hit home on this. I'm sure you've heard of it before, being Italian, that there's actually a ritual where specifically Italian witches will actually feed their boyfriends or husbands their menstrual cycle or blood stuff to basically make them their own, and it's a way to basically bind them to themselves and for marriage and things like that. So this type of witchcraft goes back even before the Italian Americans. It keeps going back. Blood always seems to have this kind of aura around it. Everybody wants that blood. So either way, it's evil, folks, and I feel bad for Jake. I mean, the minute I heard his story, I knew what it was, and I was just like, man, this guy's information has to get out there. I know, Jake, too, you were hearing about, you were finding needles clothing, like you were finding needles in your stuff, and you were
there were multiple times where I would because I wear like a lot of beanies and hats, and I would go put on one, and there would like always be like a needle in there, and I don't sew or like have a reason to have needles or a pack of needles anywhere, that there would be this many needles popping up in my house at that. And like they were always popping up everywhere. I would like go to put on a jacket or something, and like I would always catch them too.
Right.
And that was another thing. Like I had this like little safe box that it was like a lock box.
Yeah.
And every time I would find one, I would put it in a baggie, date it, and then throw it in that lockbox. And then when they broke into the apartment, all that stuff was gone. But yeah, like all the other research I had was gone. Even a lot of those fruits with the blood, I would throw them in bags, date them, and put them in the box. And all that stuff was taken whenever they broke in.
Yeah, and for those of you just joining us, the reason why he's got his face covered and he's doesn't show his face because we're trying to keep these guys' identity safe, and they're using fake accounts to do that as well because of their jobs and because of their livelihood. So I suggested them to get fake accounts and hide their identity for this reason, because unfortunately when you tell the truth, you either get labels as a nut or you have people attack you that know about this stuff and want to keep it hushed, or both. So
I'll wear that proudly.
Yep, and the guy with the Santa Claus hat, today we'll call him Leo, and the guy with the hoodie there, we'll call him Jake. So it's Leo and Jake for those of you just joining us. And I'm Dan Bidondi, the host here of TruthRadioShow.com, and we're talking about spiritual warfare and all this crazy stuff that goes along with it. I mean, you can't write the stuff in Hollywood. I mean, you can, but and all Hollywood stuff, and you work in Leo in Hollywood, you work with the Hollywood production stuff. You know that most of the stuff is all, the stuff that's in movies is from truth.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's actually, it's pretty interesting because I've been studying this stuff since I was a teenager. And, just as the year goes on, you go further and further down the rabbit hole. At first, you start to become really paranoid about what's going on. And then when you realize that there's other people out there who've experienced a lot of the same things that you have, suddenly you're not crazy anymore. You start to become a lot calm, and you start trying to figure out a way to approach. Yeah, like I'm not crazy, I swear. But you try to figure out a way to deal with these things calmly. You try to figure out a way to inform other people, and whether that be through Facebook Live, whether that be through YouTube, through song, through movie, whatever type of artist you choose to be, everybody can be an artist, and your art form can be to inform other people of this information. And you know what? It doesn't just serve us as a generation. It may just serve future generations and keep our kids and our kids' kids protected from this evil empire that's been being built for thousands of years and is just now finally coming to its spearhead of power. I mean, it's huge right now, and I think the more people we have that are woken up, the better. And if we can plant those seeds and watch those seeds grow, how beautiful is that? Just keep spreading those seeds, people. Keep waking people up, and we can build a better future. I promise.
Absolutely. Expose the deeds of evil, as said in Ephesians chapter 5 in the book of Ephesians. Right. And that's what we're supposed to do. And spiritual warfare is, besides knowing Christ, Yeshua Messiah, Savior, but besides that, spiritual warfare is the second best thing that everybody should know, especially in the faith, because when you become a Christian, a Judeo-Christian, what have you, whatever, you become in the faith, and you're protected by the covenant of God, but the enemy puts a huge target on you as well. And nobody's saying it's a walk in the park. You're not going to get riches and blessings. And in fact, because our overall goal is for the kingdom of heaven. This life here is temporary. Our overall goal is for the kingdom of heaven. But in the meantime, the enemy is going to do everything. And the thing is only what God allows him to do. And it tests your strength, makes you tested, tried, and strong Christian. So God only allows certain things to happen, but you do become a spiritual target. And we're going to be moving to the sleep paralysis thing, and after he explains everything with his relationships here. I mean, the guy on the right, Jake. Okay, we're using fake names again, and he's had his apartment broken into, his weapons stolen, all his research taken, and just that. Not money and nothing else, just that, and just little things happening. So they basically making him know and aware that they're watching him, they're around, by doing little stuff that, you could actually, like, in other words, like you live in an apartment by yourself, you come home, just say your coffee table's turned upside down. You know you didn't do that, you know what I mean? And they were doing little things like that to keep him aware for the last couple of years, hey, we're watching you. And they end up stealing all his stuff and everything else as research. And so when you tell the truth, folks, you really become a bigger target. And everybody knows me with the Boston Marathon thing, the Sandy Hook stuff, the Navy Yard shooting stuff. My target just went whoop like that. And I know how it is to be a whistleblower and exposing the truth and the deeds of darkness. And these two gentlemen do too. And if you got anything else to finish up on when you broke it into, because with this ties along with it, because of spiritual warfare and the sleep paralysis issues, we're going to get into a great detail about. All three of us have abundance of knowledge and spirit, like this whole sleep paralysis issues, where the expert doctors say, it's just a chemical reaction, and what you see is not real, it's a hallucination, even though millions of people see the same thing, but I guess millions of people have the same hallucination, you know what I mean? But if you want to finish it up, Jake, and tell us about exactly everything that's happened, and if you filed police reports, did they find any of your stuff?
But yeah, like, I would even come home and cabinets would be like wide open, like stuff would be moved around places where I wouldn't put it, like even like my balcony door, like not like the back door, but like my actual like balcony sliding door would be like left unlocked, like it wouldn't be open but just unlocked, even though like I never used the balcony at all, like it stays locked at all times, but like there would be times where it would just be unlocked and not opened or anything. I would get off work and that's like just how it would be. But yeah, like, and I did I had to file a police report because they did steal my guns. So I had to file a police report on that. They also stole a box that I had with all my serial numbers in for all my guns. So I've been having to like go around to all the places that I purchased all my guns from and go get my serial numbers from all of them and then go turn those in. But, I even did call the case number, but they said, like, pretty much they still have nothing on it. Like, they still haven't found anything or have any word on it.
I think the history of this whole thing is not that they just stole your property, but I remember you telling me that you had actual newspaper clippings on your wall, almost like you see the crazy person movie or whatever. But this is real stuff. This is what us researchers do, right? I mean, it helps us keep a clear mind, focus on the picture ahead. And I know I do the same thing. I'm always constantly taking notes. But the weirdest thing, I don't want to get too off in a tangent here, but the craziest thing is why would somebody take newspaper clippings? Of what value does that have to the common thief? I mean, what is your newspaper clippings with yarn line connected to them going to do for somebody? But I remember you literally took everything except your bed. And what else again? Remind me.
But yeah, like, pretty much they left, my couches, bed, all my clothes were, left alone. Like, my desk was, pretty much untouched. They took, like TVs and stuff. That was really it. That was a value that they took, and the weapons. But yeah, they took, my receipts with all my serial numbers for my firearms. They took all the research I had. And like I was telling y'all before, when I first heard about like the whole targeted individual situation,
right,
it was from Dr. Catherine Harthorne.
Okay.
And I had pretty much mimicked one of her setups, because she even says like a lot of it is done through radiation, and they use radiation to, like, that's how you end up with the burn marks and stuff.
Yeah.
And so like I had copied one of her setups, and like my room was like 7 layers of foil over the walls, even like where I slept, but all that was taken too. And like there's like a theory that they have that that's supposed to like block out a lot of radiation. And
yeah,
like I even have that on like my phones and stuff. Like on the back of my phones, I have special casing like around my router too that blocked out a lot of radiation that came off the router.
Yeah.
But yeah, all that stuff was gone. They did take my router too. They took my router, all my Ethernet cables. I had like other extra routers, and all that stuff was gone too. But yeah, and that was one thing I thought was really weird. They took all that foil off the walls. Like, there was no really point to do that. But yeah.
So they were in your apartment for a while then, I imagine.
Yeah, exactly. This all happened while I was where I got off work, and then I get home, and my door was wide open. There was no forced entry or anything. The door was unlocked, so they used a key.
Right. And the individual now that you suspect was tied to the Scottish Rite Club.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how much you want to unveil about that, but basically you believe that this person all along was working with the Scottish Rite in town, and that basically they worked their way into your lives with all these other people. And this is actually kind of how it worked with a lot of other targeted individuals. But, yeah.
Yeah, and he pretty much was a close friend, and I started to believe after a while they were trying to, I suspected them for a while, and I was believing for a while before all this happened that they were trying to use him as my handler pretty much. And but yeah, I had suspected that for a while, and pretty much I was staying on my path to stay with God and stay on my path with God this whole time. And they were constantly, not him exactly, but a lot of the stuff that would happen, and it would happen at weird times too. Something bad would happen, and then it was a temptation or something to get me to stray from my path would pop up, and it was every single time.
That's what we see constantly, with these targeted individuals. These handlers come into their life. Yeah. Even people who are victims of what we call today Manchurian Candidate, some call it MK Ultra. These handlers come into their lives, and they start to slowly get into their lives and seep in and try to get these individuals to do things, and whether that be do something evil or even to not spread the word of good, the word of God. That's also possible too. So, it's a very common theme to have a handler when you're, something's trying to stop you or block you away from doing something good for people.
Oh, yeah. That always happens with, they call SRA, the sexual ritual abuse survivors.
Yes.
Basically people in Hollywood or whatever that grow up with the parents into the occult. They use their children as sexual rituals and all that. They go through a lot of abuse, demonic torture and everything else, and that's why half the Hollywood people grow up on drugs and everything, because the stuff they've seen and been through. And I think anybody would be on drugs, not giving them excuses for that, but that's some serious stuff, and especially these psychologists today. They lack that understanding of spirituality, and I think that's a lot of psychologists I know that are starting to actually dabble into that now, because a lot of clients are coming to them with these different spiritual things, and they don't know how to talk to them, right? You know what I mean? Because you can't learn that stuff in school. They don't teach it in school or the colleges, whatever. And so that's a big problem that psychologists need to understand. And people who do have these spiritual problems, don't go to a psychologist. Don't go to a doctor, okay? You need to go to the, try to go to a local church. Like I said before, the video before, about a lot of churches lacking the knowledge of this, but you need to find somebody who's into spiritual warfare, somebody well-versed in the Bible and all that, to be able to help you, because it is a spiritual implication. It's a spiritual battle, and the old saying is you can't fight spirituality with science. You can't fight spirituality with modern-day medicine. You need to fight it with spirituality and spiritual warfare. That's where this comes in. And now, if you want to switch gears a little bit too, if you want to move it to the sleep paralysis, with the doctors again called sleep paralysis. Now, explain what happened to you. Basically, and for those of you who don't know, sleep paralysis, it's a state of mind where basically you're half awake, half asleep, sometimes all the way asleep, and you're paralyzed. You can't move. You can barely breathe. And most people, 99% of people, see a shadowed figure literally sitting on the chest or by the bedside, taunting them. And again, if you look on Wikipedia or anything, they'll tell you it's a chemical reaction in the body that causes this paralysis. And whatever you see is a hallucination. And like I said earlier, millions of people over the years seen the same thing. So how can everybody see the same hallucination? That don't even know each other, that doesn't know anything about this stuff. How do you see the same hallucinations if it's a hallucination? You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense, because that's their way of dismissing it as something spiritual, because that's the last thing they want to do. They want to make money off you. They want to drug you up. They want to put you on medications. It makes the big pharma companies meddle. And the thing is, some of these people know damn well it's a spiritual attack, and they will never admit it nor tell the person that. And so the only way to fight fire with fire is fighting fire with fire, whatever. Fight spirituality with spirituality, and that's through the blood of Jesus Christ, Yahshua Messiah. And so go ahead, Jake, and tell us basically how old you was when you started getting these encounters and the levels, and just explain everything that's happened to you in the best detail you could possibly explain in the sleep paralysis episodes.
It started when I was younger. I even went to doctors for it and everything. My parents took me to doctors. I would say I was probably around 8, as far back as I can remember having them, and I can remember the visions vividly. It was always a shadow, just a black shadow that would come in and through my doorway and just stand right by my bed. It wouldn't touch me or anything, just stand there, but I would feel as if something was pressing down on my chest, and I couldn't move. And a lot of the times, I would try to move, but my whole body would start shaking, and they would wake me up thinking I was having a seizure or something, and they would take me to the doctor, and they would just say it was sleep paralysis. And like you said, they would say that it's just a hallucination, and it's just caused by chemicals in the brain that give you these hallucinations. And but as I got older, I did start researching into the occult stuff, and then researching into astral projecting and being able to control your dreams. And I did start doing that, and I was able to pretty much control it whenever it would happen as I got older. And there were multiple encounters with these entities that would pose as women pretty much, but I pretty much started to, they would always come in, it was always random, and they would always pose as these women, but there was always something off about them, and I could tell they wasn't normal pretty much. And then I started looking deeper into it and find out that there's these, when you do astral project or go into REM sleep, there's spirits that usually pose as women that try to seduce you, and if they do, they can actually attach themselves to you, and pretty much they stick around, and they can just start messing with you pretty much. And you're pretty much allowing these spirits into you whenever you do that.
Yeah, it's basically typical is the succubus, and a demon called Lilith too. She's known to torture men in their sleep, and she's also said to be responsible for crib death as well. But Lilith, she's mentioned in the Bible in Genesis, and in fact, a lot of cultists actually believe that she was Adam's first wife. Now, that's here and there, the whole subject, whole ball of wax altogether, talk about that. But Lilith is a real person, or demon, I should say. And anybody seen the movie, The Knowing? No, not The Unknown. No, that movie that was filmed in Nome, Alaska or whatever? It was to do with aliens and...
I'm not too familiar with it, but I know because a lot of occultists believe that Lilith was Adam's other wife that grew on the back of Eve. That's just absurd.
Yeah.
But it's not biblical whatsoever.
I forgot the name of that movie, but it was filmed in Alaska off a true story. They were doing studies of men sleeping, and because, sleep paralysis, and basically the men would be attacked, and they would talk about, and every time the men were attacked in the movie, it would associate with a white screech owl, or an alien. Now, it's all connected because the aliens we perceive to be these aliens from other planets, they're actually fallen angels or their offspring, the Nephilim, and the Watchers, the Bible calls them. And there's many different kinds, many. And there's always associated with white screech owl. Now, Lilith, she basically... she was a rebel against men. You know, basically in the myth that she was Adam's first wife, she refused to acknowledge his authority in the family and purposely to defy God. But she does torture men in the sleep, and that's reality. And she's always associated with white screech owl. She teaches women defiance. That's why if you see the L'Oreal commercials, like the makeup commercials. And it's creepy. And on the L'Oreal, a couple of years ago, I was on that website and went on a financial report. As the page loads, right, in the white background, you can see a white screech owl appear before the woman. Then in some of the commercials, you can see in the reflection of the girl's eye, a white screech owl. It's always associated with a white screech owl because it teaches women defiance against God's will, and it also tortures men, and there's always a white screech owl involved. And so there's some of the symbols and some of the things that happen during these things. And there's many demons, like he was describing the shadow figure. It could be Lilith, it could be succubus, depends what's going on. And I believe a demon called Azrael. There's many names for that. And there's another demon.
And I think you were also talking about Jezebel as well.
Jezebel, yep, the Jezebel spirit as well. Spirit of Baal, spirit of Baphomet. And people say, well, Baphomet's new. I forgot the guy's name that created the Baphomet. It wasn't too, it was recent centuries there that he created the Baphomet. But the thing is, I forgot the guy's name. I should have the information. But Baphomet is thousands of years old. It's just different names he had through the ages. And when they created that Baphomet spirit, I forgot the guy's name. It's right off the top of my head. Because a lot of cultists would bring that up. Oh, Baphomet's new. He's not ancient. Well, no, he's not new because he got that off an ancient Egyptian deity. It's the same deity, different names through the ages. That's why I say Satan has many, many names. People say, well, there was no Satan or Lucifer thousands of years ago. Well, yeah, there was because
there was.
He had different names. He had different names, and throughout each custom, throughout each age, there was a different name or a picture of a deity of him, but it's all the same thing. And so that demon, it is an entity, a demon, and this is not a hallucination. No, real quick, I want to, this is the Wikipedia definition, and it makes me laugh, it really does. But it says sleep paralysis, this is the definition, is when during awakening or falling asleep, a person is aware but unable to move or speak. During an episode, one may hallucinate, hear, feel, or see something that's not there. It often results in fear, but they do, when you actually go in the page, they do have a picture of a demon over a person's body, but they're trying to say it's all hallucination, and it's necrolepsy, atomic seizures, whatever that causes this, or sleep deprivation or alcohol use is one of the factors too. But kids don't have alcohol use or sleep deprivation. You know what I mean? And how could all these people see the same thing? I seen the same thing as Jake did. You know what I mean? When I had major levels of sleep paralysis, I seen the same thing. And many people I know who have sleep paralysis or I talk to, it's the same thing. How could it be the same thing? And was everybody in tune with each other with the same hallucinations? You know what I mean? And people don't even, and as kids, right, we don't know anything about this stuff. So how can we see the same thing, not knowing each other, not knowing nothing about this? How could that just be a hallucination? And when instantly the word of God, the speaking, calling upon Jesus Christ to help you, stops it cold dead in its tracks.
Dan, I also wanted to talk a little bit about how common this theme is that you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's very funny. I don't know if funny is the word to use here. But by the way, I don't know if you guys can see that sign right there. If that offends you, this may not be the stream for you. Anyway, continuing on. It's a common theme that we see with these people that are either target individuals. We're all sensitive, right? We're all spiritual people. Some would call us mediums. I don't know what you want to call it, whatever. I denounce all types of witchcraft, But it just somehow seems that people that were destined to speak truth, people that were destined to speak the word of God, we're always the ones that are being attacked by these spirits at a very young age, I remember, being in my room, and for years, and my mother can tell you that she used to come into my room and uncover me at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning when I was dead asleep, because all night long I had the covers over my blanket because I was hiding from the shadow people. Okay, that's heavy stuff. So those shadows that I was seeing, it seemed to be very common. We're not looking at mental psychology here. We're not looking at mental illness. Science needs to stop defining this type of stuff as mental illness, because it's not fair to the individual, and it's not fair to the people that consider themselves sensitives.
Exactly.
I don't mean sensitive as in politically correctness, because I don't believe in that bullshit either.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying here is I believe in God, and I think that because, people like you, myself, Dan, who are destined to talk about God and spread the truth about the gospel of Jesus Christ, I honestly do believe in the heart of hearts that this was known, that this was our destiny, and they will do anything to block it.
Yeah.
And, that's just what happens, and that's why I really do believe that Jake Park is being targeted, because they knew already that he would come to light and have all these experiences. And if you notice, too, a lot, it's always people that have occultic knowledge that get these attacks. Why? Because you could warn other occultists. You can warn people and say, hey, man, I've already been down that path. I've researched A through Z. I've gone through all these different religions and winded back at Judeo-Christianity. Yep. And why is that? Because it's the only true God. It's the only true God out there. And I'm sorry if that offends you, but I'm not sorry. It's the truth. I've studied for years so many dogmas, okay, and I ended up back at Judeo-Christianity, okay. I was born a Roman Catholic. I went through all the ringers during my confirmation. I went through confirmation, and after that, I ended up studying all these different types of religions and went down the wrong path. And somehow I ended up back. And God woke me up, and he allowed me to take those paths to research that so I can in the future warn other people. And those people knew about that. Okay? They knew that I would come to that. And they were going to try to stop me and the many other people that had that path ahead of them. So this is a very common theme. A lot of us that have kind of experienced this also have experienced the shadow people in their room at night. For you guys, I don't have the sleep paralysis. It comes to me in a different form. But again, it's a very common theme. I don't want to take up too much of the air, Dan. I apologize.
Oh, no, not at all. I love to hear this stuff.
I just, for anybody out there, again, I really wanted this video too, I'm so happy you made me a part of this, because I wanted this video to be out there for other people to see, and, if they're experiencing things like that, so that they can maybe get an answer that they're looking for, and maybe it'll help them a little bit, because there's a lot of people living out there in fear. There's people living out there in anxiety, and they're stressed out from their 9-to-5 jobs, and they're coming back home and dealing with these problems they don't even know how to explain, and they're afraid to go to a doctor because they're afraid to be told they're crazy. You're not crazy. You're not crazy. There is God out there, and he loves you. That is it. That is how it goes.
Amen to that. And like me, when I was a kid, I remember about 7 years old, and I still remember this like it was yesterday. I don't know if it was a dream or what, but I had literally both of my arms being tugged opposite ways. And I remember it was Satan on one side and God on the other side. And I told my mom and all these people, and they say, well, God has a mission for you. That's why Satan's trying to, what's going on is Satan was trying to get you ahead of time, because God, the thing is, the demonic spirits, they know what's in the future. They know if people are mocked by God, that means having a purpose. And they tried to tug me. At the time, I'm 7 years old. I didn't know nothing. They asked, who do you believe, who are you going to follow? And I said both, just to get them both off me at the time. But when I grew up, I had a lot of spiritual implications, major sleep paralysis. My bed used to shake. My cousins could verify that. Glowing entities over my bed. My bed shaking, something punched the back of it, being literally ripped off my bed. So much crazy stuff, and there's more stuff I don't care to get into. We're at this point right now because I don't want to sound like a complete lunatic to people, and I don't blame you if you did call me a lunatic. But I'll just go there. I had encounters with so-called aliens, and I believe I was abducted as well, and because I had some major time displacements. When we came out of it, it was basically hours ahead or hours in the past. You know what I mean? And that's a whole story altogether. But I grew up in this.
That story before. I remember that.
And like you, I was a Catholic too. You know what I mean? And I went through all the motions. Then I became a Baptist, and at 16, then I started dabbling into the occult. I wasn't a full witch, but I did dabble into a lot of witchcraft, a lot of New Age stuff. I mean, I had one out-of-body experience, scared the hell out of me. And I had ability, I couldn't control it, but I had ability to actually move something with my mind. And come to find out it wasn't me doing it, it's demonic spirits that do that stuff. And so I was getting, I mean, I had premonitions, things were getting real scary. Then I come to find out my ancestors on my mother's side, my grandmother, she did away with her sisters. In other words, she moved out of Salem, Massachusetts because two of her sisters were legit witches, high-level witches in Salem, Massachusetts. Like, this is long, long ago. My grandmother's like 80-something years old, but she's passed away now. But so back then, they were legit witches, and she kept our family away from them. But it's hereditary hereditary curses and everything else that come along. And so the sleep paralysis was going, getting worse and worse. I mean, wild things were happening. And I tried every method to confront it, and it wouldn't work. Just one day, I just got this righteous anger over me. I got sick of it. I'm like, in the name of Jesus, like, and I was so convicted because I was sick and tired. I never got sleep or nothing after this because when it got worse, so I just invoked Jesus Christ, Yeshua Messiah, and boom, it went away instantly. And all the other methods I tried never worked. It made it worse and instantly. And that's my testimony with that. But Jake, if you want to give yours too, continue what you're talking about with your experiences with the sleep paralysis.
I do want to ask you. You said you believe you were abducted at one point?
Well, I didn't, like, people, experts in this field said, because of the signs that happened to me, they said that you were abducted. And it was one of those times I actually seen a being. And I thought I was dreaming, I thought I was sleeping, and this is when the sleep paralysis kicked in. This being, whatever, came to my window, and I don't know if I was sleeping or what, and I seen it. And it was like kind of reptilian looking thing, and it shined this weird light into my face. I passed out, and ever since then I had a major sleep paralysis and these attacks and everything. And one day, I mean, I could be sitting there watching TV in my bedroom. All of a sudden, I see the volume go all the way up. I turn around, the remote control just drops from, you know what I mean? I'm sitting on the bed, and I had the stereo playing. And at the time we had the old stereos, this is back in the 90s. And I hear like the microphone kickback. And I see somebody at the stereo, the lights off. I'm like, and I thought it was my brother, like, Jason, what the hell are you doing? And it looked at me and jumped on his bed. And get up, turn the light on, and he's not even in the room. I had my door locked, so he couldn't have got in anyway. And I mean, it's just all these little encounters. There's so many, I can go on for hours with this stuff over the years. And so I learned that. And the other bad thing I was doing, not only the occult, okay, and I still believed in God, but I was dabbling into the stuff. But I got involved with like you, Leo, we were both paranormalists. We got involved with the paranormal research and everything.
I had to say goodbye to that.
Yep. Oh, yeah, it took me 20 years to say goodbye to that, to finally realize this, I mean, like the Bible talks about necromancy, divinization, communicating with the dead, and all that stuff is forbidden. When I learned that stuff, I'm like, oh, that's what I'm doing wrong. So I confronted all this stuff in the blood of Jesus Christ, and that's when it all stopped. But, like you said, God leads us through these things to, allows it to happen a little bit, because especially if he's got a purpose for you, there's no better testimony than somebody who's been in the occult. That's why I have William Schnobling on a lot, former Illuminati guy, former satanic priest and all that. There's no better testimony. Look at, who was it, one of the apostles that was a murderer? Was it Mark or Matthew or... I forgot which one.
Paul is the greatest.
Paul, that's a...
Paul, Saul, and you mentioned Paul, right? And I think he's one of the greatest examples of how someone could turn their life around. Because if there was a bad deed to do, he did them all. And he wanted the highest prize. I mean, he went for it, And it's a good example of how people can really turn their life around. You were talking a little bit about, just like how, paranormal investigations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And you were also talking too about like people healing and stuff like that too. So I kind of want to hit a little bit about that if you'll allow me.
Yeah, absolutely.
So paranormal investigations, a lot of us out that go out there and we're checking out EMPs, EVPs, or all that stuff. I said electromagnetic pulse, but that's coming. But EVPs, and we're checking waves out, listening for frequencies and things like that. Now, the most interesting thing, this is what got me to kind of turn away from paranormal investigations, is myself and many of the other people that would go out and do these investigations would somehow find the same spirit or a very similar spirit. Now, what is that spirit? Well, it's usually the spirit of a young child, right? So, and you can hear we'd go back and listen to it, and you'd hear help or help me or whatever. And it's the same thing that's being done politically in America. The way you tug at someone's, the way you can manipulate somebody is by tugging on their heartstrings. And who doesn't have sympathy? Any decent human being who hears a child pleading for help is going to be manipulated.
Yep.
And that's exactly what's happening out here with politics. And the other thing I want to hit upon too, first explaining the child theory, is that these demons know they can change their voice, they can change their shape. A lot of people, aliens out there, if people are experiencing aliens, those are demons. And those same demons can change their shape.
Oh, so elaborate on that too, when you're saying about changing shapes and voices. Now, a lot of people say they talked or seen their dead grandmother or relative, and yes, they will tell you stuff that only you two knew, but God calls these familiar spirits. They're not who you think they are, because God does not, you cannot talk to the dead. They're in his kingdom, you cannot talk to them. So a person that appears to you looks like your grandmother, tells you only stuff you guys know, it's not her, it's a familiar spirit, it's an evil spirit. And I just wanted to elaborate on that to let people know also the other encounters that they may come across.
They'll do everything they can to pull at your heartstrings and get you on their side and what they want to do. And they're very good. Remember, the greatest deceiver that ever was is Satan himself. And a lot of those demons working for him. So, the great deceiver is hard at work, and he never stops working. So don't ever forget that. Now, the other thing I was going to talk to you about is these people out there that say they're healing. So, these magicians or whatever you want to call them, people that study magic, black magic, gray magic, it's all the same. It's all rooted in evil. I don't care. I'm sorry if that offends you. If you think you're a good witch, maybe you're a good person. But if you're studying magic and Wicca, it all derives from the same place. And I apologize if that offends you.
It is, the healing too, in the occult, a lot of people in the New Age call it the Reiki, they're known for so-called healing people.
Yep. That's the other thing too. And also yoga too, with the snake wrapping around the spine.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
The Kundalini magic,
Yep. A lot of these healers out there will say, I heal you, or I healed you. And even preachers in churches will say that.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very unfortunate. But the true healing does not come from a human being. Okay? True healing comes from God. It's divine intervention. Okay? When God can come down and heal you. And I remember you and I, Dan, were talking about this a long time ago, how sometimes people would get healed at these churches, and then the very next day you never see them on the TV because they don't want to show what happens. 24 hours, 48 hours later, the people are 10 times worse than the way they came into that church.
Yeah.
Why? It's because these false prophet churches, they're out there, they're disinformation agents, they're out there, they're trying to promote this fake cultism, okay, pretending that they're believers, they're not, okay? And people, be aware of that. You want the word of God, God will give it to you. It's right there in the Bible.
Amen. And to elaborate on that, to the preachers, now people need to understand, yes, they're going to make somebody in a wheelchair that's never walked in their life jump off that chair. They're going to make the people bark like dogs, spiritual barking crap. All right, all this is in the Bible too, how it's false. Now, people say, well, what kind of power is doing this if it ain't God? And like Leo says, I keep looking at my hand, Leo says that they don't show what happens the next day, but the thing is, these pastors, right, they're out for money, right? They study something that's all called the old Kundalini spirit, Kundalini magic. Now, we're not saying people who simply go out and stretch for yoga are evil. We're not saying that. It's when you start getting into the spiritual aspect of yoga, then they teach you about the chakras, aligning the chakras, and the third eye of the pineal gland. Now, when you align the chakras and you're always sitting in this hum position and all that, you're invoking the B666. That's what it is. You're pulling in the Kundalini. Now, the Kundalini is a serpent spirit. That's literally a spiritual serpent that wraps around your spine. Now, when this pastor, he's got this Kundalini spirit in him, and he's got people who are just wide open to this guy. They, seeking this guy, just totally, their doors are wide open. So he goes, lays hands, he's always laying hands on the head. He lays hands on his forehead, or the woman, whatever, on his wheelchair. He passes the Kundalini into that woman, goes down the spine, and they jump right off the chair, run around for the first time in their lives. People run around back like dogs talking in tongues. Now I want to explain one thing. Tongues, okay? And 2 Corinthians specifies about talking in tongues. It says, if a man talks in tongues and he doesn't edify it, it is not of God. Now, how many churches you go to that talk in tongues, you have no idea what they're talking about. And they can't edify it. That's not of God, that's of the devil. Jesus himself says that in 2 Corinthians. If you talk in tongues and you edify it, and most of the time, like, in other words, if somebody talks in tongues, right, you got people who speak only 5 different languages, like a Russian, Japanese, whatever, an English person. When that person speaks of those tongues, all those people of those different languages could hear him. Like the angel spoke in tongues during the when they separated the nations after the crumble of Babylon. When an angel spoke, he didn't have to speak each time for each language. He spoke once in tongues, and every language heard what the angel had to say. And that's what real tongues is. Or somebody speaks it out, then they speak it in English. And so that's a lot of spiritual implications that these false pastors do, and using the Kundalini magic to make people do all kinds of crazy stuff and so-called healing. And again, like Leo said, they don't show you what happens to the person the day after.
Yeah. Jay, I don't want to take much of the floor from you. I want you to speak everything you kind of been experiencing. Can you tell us kind of right now where you are in, I guess, this investigation of who stole your private property and what you're trying to do to recover some of your property that was taken from you?
Pretty much right now what I'm doing the only thing I can do is to recover my property is just wait on the police report and see if they get anything within the next few days, which I did check on it today, and they said still nothing. I did even ask them, if they, the possibilities of getting my stuff back, and they said they were pretty much slim to none.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask you, Dan and Leo, what do you call it? Or even Dan, whenever you said you did have that abduction experience, did you experience any time loss?
Oh yeah. And again, like I said,
when y'all when y'all would do paranormal investigations, did you experience any time loss?
Oh yeah.
When I was doing a lot of my research and stuff, here we do have a place that a lot of cultic people go to that is called Hell's Gates. And what do you call it? I did try to do the whole paranormal stuff a lot, when I was younger, and we did go out there, and a lot of there was a few times that I did go out and saw literally walking out into the fields, and out of nowhere an owl is right there in front of me, and then a few seconds later my phone's ringing, and what do you call it? It was my cousin saying she's been calling me for hours, but it literally only felt a few seconds. I see the owl, and out of nowhere my phone's ringing, and I answer it, and they said they were calling me for hours, but I experienced time loss pretty much. It was hours went by, and even after I answered the phone and looked back, the owl was gone.
And to you, it's only seconds or something, right?
Yeah, it felt literally just 2 seconds. Like, I see it, look at, like, phone starts ringing, I look down, enter it, and look back, it's gone, and they say they've been calling me for hours, and I look at the phone, and it was about, like, 2 a.m. when I was out there, and then when I look at my phone, it's, like, about 4 a.m., it's, like, already about to be, like, sunrise.
Well, mine 3 times I had witnesses.
If you can, I'd love to hear you tell Jake about that story in Cumberland, Rhode Island.
Oh, yeah, and if it wasn't for the witnesses, I wouldn't have believed it. This happened to me 3 times, but one with the Cumberland, Rhode Island one. I was with my uncle, my cousin, some friends. We had a big paranormal group, and so every night we used to go to this Cumberland Monastery, and, excuse me, but we used to go to the Cumberland Monastery, and we seen the cop there. We had a good relationship with the Cumberland police, and we go in there and like, oh, don't tell us anything. We don't want to get scared, you know what I mean? So one night we got there, and it was almost between shift change, and we seen one of the cops there. He goes, hey, guys, what's up? You going to some ghost hunting again? And I'm like, yeah. He goes, yeah, don't mind me. I'm just hanging out here until my shift's over, another 5-10 minutes, whatever. I'm like, oh, no problem. He goes, have fun, guys. So we go into the woods, and and all these things happen to do with some strange light, all these encounters. But we start seeing things and hearing things. And now, mind you, we've been up there for 20 years. We've been going to this place. And, you could go through there, and we know the ins and outs of that place. We could go through there blindfolded. So we seen this weird, strange light. We're trying to follow it to see what the hell it was. And there was this, like, a huge rock quarry.
You're good.
There was this huge rock quarry that happened. There was a rock quarry, I'm sorry. And there's this motorcycle just going straight over it without bumping. But that could, could go either way. But basically what happened was, is he still on? Loading video. All right, so basically we were trying to follow this light. And we couldn't get to it, no matter how much we went toward it. And we were being chased by some person on a motorcycle. And sounds kind of funny, whatever. But anyway, we tried to get out of there. So we could not get out of there for hours. I mean, we spent hours on end into that place. I think we lost Jake. And
I'm still here with you, Dan.
Right.
Back up.
So we spent hours trying to get out of the place. We're exhausted, right? So we finally get out, right? And get out of this place after we seen another bright light and that shine in our face. So the entrance is right there. So we exit the park there, and as soon as we exit, the police officer's still there, the same cop. And he goes like, "You guys done already?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh yeah." It's like, "These guys just got this guy here. I'm about ready to leave because my shift's over." And we're looking at each other. It's like, "What are you talking about?" It's like, "Would you fall asleep?" He started laughing. He goes, no. He's and we're like, well, you know what time it is, right? So 4:30 in the morning. I watch you set it, you know what I mean? And the cop's like, you guys smoking something back there? And he's like, just looking at us weird. And then we're like, the looks on our faces, right? And then we talk about this motorcycle and this incident that happened there. His face turned white, and he's like, because I guess some kids played a prank on a person on a dirt bike, put a fishing string up, and actually decapitated him and all that. So we tell him the stuff, and he's like, don't tell me no more. He goes, you guys dead serious that you've been in there for 4 hours? And I'm like, dude, look at my watch. We had the old bulky cell phone thing. My uncle's, look at that. He goes, shut up, don't tell me you know what. He goes, I'm getting the hell out of here. He goes, thanks guys, I could never come in here again. So the cop, if it wasn't for that cop, none of us would ever believe it. You know what I mean? And again, when we got there, he said he's got another 5-10 minutes to his shift's over. And so in reality, when we got to the car, the clock in the car matched the reality time. It was like over 4 hours on the watches to the clock. You know what I mean? So we're like, wow, we really knew something happened. If it wasn't for the cop to verify this, we would have never believed it. You know what I mean? That was just one of the 3 incidents that happened. And, but we were going for 4+ hours in that episode. In reality, it was only probably minutes.
Yeah, I don't know if we might have lost Jake. I'm not sure what happened. But I'm sure you can go back and watch this video and stuff, because he about your experience a little bit, and obviously other people are getting to hear that. Awesome. But yeah, like getting back to paranormal investigations, you know, I remember for years and just like having the interest. Oh, like we're going to contact the dead. We're going to, you know, talk to spirits. You know, and the older me now, the wiser me. You know, like if I could go back and warn myself, I would. You know.
Yeah.
And we even see this with other people that are paranormal investigators too. And some of them who are actually on shows on TV where they where they don't want to.
That was weird.
we see a lot of times in you know, these television shows that are broadcasted on cable television where the hosts don't want to do it anymore, and that's because they've been around it long enough to know that these things are following them home. You know,
exactly.
And what I can say for these people that have experienced that, anybody listening on this video, just pray to Christ, you know, and may the blood of Christ wash you, you know, cleanse you, and it'll take it away. It'll take the best stuff away. Remember that Christ is the most powerful, you know. God is a great being of this universe.
Amen.
And if you're experiencing any of that, you know, if you've dabbled in the occult, if you've dabbled with paranormal investigations, if you're experiencing UFOs or aliens or any of that type of stuff that just seems ungodly, get down on your knees and pray to God and see what that does for your life.
Amen. And I know, folks, it might sound like we're all over the place, but it's all related, all of it. And
really is.
This is how things like sleep paralysis happen and other spiritual attacks. And before we get to more of that stuff, Jake, Jake, because again, those of us just joining, these two people here protecting their identity, they're using fake accounts because they're worried about ramifications from their jobs and their everyday life, because this stuff does make you a target, or, you know, people call you loony bin that don't understand. But Jake, if you want to finish up, tell us about your sleep paralysis experience. And how'd you get rid of it, too?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Just like finish up, tell us some of the things that happened during your sleep paralysis experiences, and finish off with how you ended up getting rid of it.
Okay, but yeah, like the sleep paralysis, it went on for years as a kid, and it wasn't until like in my teens that it stopped for a little bit, and as I got older, it was probably like in my 20s that it started to come back. And also during that time, I was like into the whole like new age movement and stuff, and like meditating a lot, and I was dabbing with like psychedelics a lot, and I was like traveling and going to these places to go do these psychedelics, and what do you call it? It wasn't until, like I told y'all before, that when I had tried DMT that I like saw like what's really going on when you take these psychedelics, and you're opening up yourself to these entities that can injure you when you're taking these psychedelics, and they can stick around and they will mess with you, and they also cause the sleep paralysis you experience and stuff too. And what I did do to like, I was trying like many things. I was like also trying like these cleanses and stuff, which obviously didn't work at all. And it wasn't until like I started getting right with God and that it actually ended it all. And what do you call it? Like literally, like all the sleep paralysis, I haven't had them in it's been like probably like 6 months, almost half a year since I've had any sleep paralysis episodes. But my actual like targeting still continued, and I'm not exactly sure if it's still connected with. If I know like they're connected, but I'm not sure if that's what's also part of, like, if that's the entity itself from the sleep paralysis episodes that's causing the targeting, or the people involved in the lodges that I know.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dan. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, like, I just want to put our note out to people. when none of us here are saying all Masons are evil people. In fact, over 80% are real good people, good Christians, but unfortunately they're hoodwinked to believe that they're in something good when it's not. But yes, high levels of, that's why it's called the craft for a reason, because it's legit a witchcraft operation. It's a Luciferian doctrine. It's a Luciferian organization. And it's the 1,000 points of illumination, the Ultimate Eye is the eye of Lucifer. It's not the eye of Horus, not the eye of Prudence. It's the eye of Lucifer. And only select few Masons get to learn it later on. I mean, that's way beyond an average Mason's understanding. And they will never, in everything they do, they intentionally mislead everybody in the craft unless they carve you to the cornerstone they want you to be. And but yeah, like you were saying, man, this is a big problem here. And yeah, because they're probably using incantations on you and all that stuff, and constantly casting spells. Plus the girls you dated too. One of my first girlfriends, she was into witchcraft too, so that probably, I mean, that does. Female witches are very possessive of their men, you know what I mean? And so God knows what she's done. That's why the blood in the apples and everything, the blood in the pears and all that is a significant thing. But that could be a huge thing that opened that doorway, that stronghold for your sleep paralysis and your demonic attacks and your, you know, little things happening. Like poltergeist is a German word for a noisy spirit. They actually let you know they're there. They'll move stuff like it's been happening to you, and they make themselves known, and which are demons.
Dan, can I say something really quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this is very, very important because Jake talking about, you know, talking about psychedelics and things like that. There's going to be two crowds of people, maybe three people that are listening, and here's some of the opinions that they're going to get just by hearing him say that. Okay, one, they're going to respect it, and they're going to understand it because they've either done it themselves or they've heard things about it. Or two, they're going to discredit his testimony. Okay? Now, me, I've never done psychedelics. I've never been on them, but I've done a lot of research, trust me, and I know a lot of people who have done it. And one of the biggest things that they always say is that when they go on these trips, now this is not just psilocybin mushrooms, okay? This is DMT, sometimes also known as ayahuasca. It's an old, you know, Native Americans used to use it and trip out. What happens is you fall into a deep sleep, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jake, but you fall into a deep sleep and you're brought into a different place, right?
Yeah, and even like it's literally believed, like, because when you do take it, you literally fall asleep. You're not awake whatsoever. Right. Your body falls asleep. Right. And it is believed that, and a lot of the culture, like I said, I would travel and I would go to these these tribes and partake in their ceremonies of the ayahuasca rituals and stuff, and they literally do, like, that is their belief that your spirit literally leaves your body, and they say that you're supposed to visit your ancestors. And just like Dan was saying, when you do see these spirits or these people that represent themselves as your ancestors or loved ones that have passed, they're not really your loved ones that have passed. They're these entities, these spirits that are trying to trick you. And
yeah, that's why I was bringing that up, because
and when they do that, they have the ability to, because your spirit literally isn't in your body when you're experiencing this, or when you're there. You're in like a different realm completely. And even the John Hopkins, the University of John Hopkins has done research on it, and they have said that there is something that leaves your body when you do experience DMT or ayahuasca.
Well, there's another one in Africa too. They just found where you talk about psychedelics. I guess this guy went over to Africa, and there's another one, a psychedelic. It's not a drug. It's supposedly safer, they say, but it's a tree, part of a tree bark. A certain tree is called Iboga. I can't pronounce it right, but it's an African psychedelic drug. I'm going to pick up the camera and show the right there. It's Iboga, the African psychedelic drug. And I'm sorry for the little ghetto shift here, folks. Those just joining us. We try to do this on three-way Facebook, but Facebook for some reason is giving me a hard time. And those of you watching that's cutting in and out, and I apologize about that. For some reason, the internet's screwing up over here. And we are recording this. This is going to be on live, this live right now, but we're recording this as well. And it's going to go on the YouTube channel and other platforms as well.
Really quick, guys, if I may reposition, then I want to hear the rest of Jake, too, talking about some of it.
Yep.
But I just want to quickly reposition. Now, there's a reason why there's a veil up, right? There's a curtain. That curtain that, people describe as the right side of your brain or the left side of your brain. Often we talk about that kind of paradigm. We talk about go to sleep, we go to a different place. Some people talk about, well, when you die, you go to heaven or you go to hell. There's a reason why you and I are alive, right? And our blood is still pumping and our heart's still feeding our brain and we're conscious. There's a reason why there's a separation, okay? Now, when we try to force a break into other worlds, we're exposed, okay? And we're very, very vulnerable to spiritual attack. Okay. Now I know anybody listening to this that's done a lot of psychedelics and that are still into it will probably disagree with me. That's fine. And maybe you feel like you have a control on your trip and you can make every trip a good trip. Well, let me tell you something. There's going to come a time where that's going to change for you. Yep. I know many people who have gone into a bad trip and they thought everything they had been seeing for years worth of trips was all just one big thing that they can explain. And then when it all opened, it made sense. They were being deceived for many years, and they were going out and they were doing mushrooms, DMT, ayahuasca, all these different things, types of psychedelic drugs, and they had no idea what was going on. But finally, the truth was revealed to them, and a lot of these people that are now believers in Jesus Christ, they now understand it because, again, it's the same thing. It comes full circle. Dan was making the reference earlier how it all comes full circle when we're talking about spiritual warfare and how it relates into the physical realm that we're in and we're talking in right now. And, when you're going out there and you're doing ghost hunting or doing paranormal investigations, you're being deceived. When you're taking a trip, you're being deceived. And I think you can talk a little bit more about that, and go ahead and talk a little bit about that, please.
But yeah, like when, and I have noticed it myself by experience, and when you do, like, even when you're having a good time on these psychedelics and you feel like it's all sunshine and rainbows, and it has you feeling like you're like happy or like whatever it has you feeling, you're being deceived either way. Even before it shows you the bad trips, it's tricking you into doing it over and over, and it's these entities that are making you feel that way. And they're pretty much tricking you to making you think that, oh, it's okay to take this substance, and like, because even the whole New Age movement and a lot of even like mainstream media is pushing it a lot lately too. Like there's even I know there's one state that's about to legalize psilocybin mushrooms too.
Yep.
And I think it's Ohio. But yeah, there's one state that's about to legalize mushrooms, and they're saying that it's for medical uses only. But that's all just for them to deceive you. That's how they're going to push it out.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
There's, a connection between the physical world and the spiritual world, and these people that are doing this know that they can get you in the spiritual out on your doorstep. They're still invading you somehow, and they're going to try to push anything they can do to weaken you spiritually. So that's what's going on.
And I'm going to become a heel here for a lot of people, especially the truth movement, because the whole big thing about the legalization of marijuana now. And we got people, good friends of mine too, say, well, marijuana is in the Bible, cannabis, what they call it, I'm sorry, and, all this stuff. But the thing is, yes, cannabis and all that stuff, the oils were used and all that stuff, but they didn't go around getting high and baked. Okay, that's
exactly. Yeah, I was talking to Leo about this the other day too, and I was telling him, yes, exactly. Like even in the Bible, it says that every herb is meant for men to heal, but it's meant to be used as meat, as the same way as meat. Meaning you're supposed to digest it. You're not supposed to be rolling it up and smoking it. You don't roll up a steak and smoke it, or like you don't try to inhale a steak. You eat it. You digest it. And it even says to only do things in moderation. You're not supposed to, because even whenever you do become fixated on one thing and you do it for an earthly feeling you get, that's ideology.
Yeah.
Like you're therefore worshiping that thing, whatever it is, whether it be movies, whether it be playing a sport, you're doing it because it makes you feel a certain way, and that's turning you away from God itself.
And that's why I have to state that, we're not saying you're a bad person, and I'm not, but the thing is about legalizing it, especially for recreation. I mean, like if you face it right now, people could barely drive sober. I mean, I don't know how many of my friends and family say, well, I can drive high.
Exactly.
They say, I can drive high, I'm very conscious.
Leave the house every day.
Yeah. And they claim they're very alert and conscious, but the thing is, when we see them high, they believe in their head that they're alert and conscious, but we can see them delayed, like the delayed reaction. And they believe that they're miles ahead of you, when in reality, they're like,
Exactly.
you ask them a question, they answer 5 minutes later, or repeat the same thing 3 times. You know what I mean? And, but the thing is, I'm not judging people who smoke, whatever, but I'm just saying, this is a psychedelic, a form of psychedelic, because it does affect your mind. It does affect your, what's that word?
Like your cognitive
conscience. Yeah. So that can provide a gateway into the pineal gland, the third eye, to open up the channel unclean spirits.
I can't give testimony on the psychedelics because I've never done hard drugs, but I can give testimony on cannabis. Okay, both indica, sativa, both strains, hybrids. I can give a testimony about that. I for years was involved with people, and we all got together regularly and smoked every single day. And I would boast. You want to talk about idolatry? I would boast that I smoke anybody under the table. Okay, I could sit there from the time I woke up to the time I fell asleep smoking all day long, and I did that for years. And one day, and it just so happened to be around the time when I started becoming spiritually awoken, I just couldn't do it anymore. And I tried 2 more times after that to see if it was a bad strain, to see if somebody had laced it, maybe, which I knew that wasn't even a possibility, but I tried that anyway, make sure if that was a theory or not. But I knew where it was being grown and all that stuff, so I knew it was safe. There's no denying, okay, when we try to alter our mind or try to connect spiritually, you're making yourself vulnerable to spiritual attack. And again, I'm in full circle. This is what we're talking about. We're talking about us believing that we can protect ourselves and that we're strong beings, and when we go into these trips or we go into these mind-altering states, that we can protect ourselves. And God tells you, man, He is the defender, okay? And when you start boasting that you can do these things on your own, you're going to be okay, you're wrong. One of the things always people ask me, and it's one of the questions that Christians receive a lot. It's like, well, do you discredit all other religions? Do you they want to always get you with that. They want to see it PC, and they want to see how it's going to, what your response is going to be. Okay. The thing we were talking about earlier was ayahuasca, okay? And we're talking about how Native Americans would use this ayahuasca to connect to other beings and other, entities out there, okay? It's the same thing. We're all living on that same plane. It doesn't matter if you call it Balal, you're talking about Moloch, about Baphomet, about Azrael, Lilith, Jezebel. They're all the same. Okay, they come in different forms, but they all serve the same master. Exactly. Okay, no matter who you're seeing, if you weren't meant to see it, don't try to see it. If you're dabbling with it, don't. Just get away from it. And like I said, if you're experiencing this stuff in your life, just do yourself the favor and fall down on your knees and pray to God for forgiveness and accept Him as your Lord and Savior, because I want you to see what it's like to do that in your life. And I'm talking to you as someone who experienced this thing as the 180, and I've came full around again. Okay, I've dabbled in a lot of different religions, and this was the only one for me, and it just made sense. I woke up one day, and mostly everything made sense. I'm not trying to be overly wise with people, but remember, being wise is also being humble. And until you're humble and can receive information, you're not wise. You may think you're smart, and you may be, but being wise is being able to receive information. And I think that's what we're doing to you right now. I think if you guys are listening to this broadcast, you're getting a lot of information here, and hopefully it's being helpful to your life and maybe to other loved ones around you. All of us here in this broadcast have experienced a lot of weird spiritual stuff. So please, if you're listening, just give that some consideration.
Absolutely. Jake, because these batteries are almost going dead, but we probably got another 20 minutes or so. But if you got anything else to add, Jake, about any of the experiences you had with sleep paralysis, and did it correlate with anything like any hauntings or whatever, any kind of physical attacks or anything like that? Or if you got anything to add to it, please do.
Well, I would wake up with burn marks, and it wasn't necessarily they wouldn't look like burns, but it was my skin felt like it was on fire. But then I would look at it and it would be just discolored, it would just be really red and almost like a brown, a really dark brown, and it was just, my skin was discolored and it felt like it was burning. And sometimes wake up with scratches. Like I told you, I had got this one tattoo, and it was the lion and the lamb from the Bible.
Yeah.
And she was going to cover up one on my chest, and she did the lion and the lamb first, and then she was going to do the one on my chest, and I took off my shirt, and as I took off my shirt, she freaked out, because she was like, what happened? And I was like, what do you mean? She was like, there's scratches on your back. And I look in the mirror, and there were fresh, whelped up scratches that were open and everything, and they were just deep on across my back. But yeah, there were multiple times where I woke up with just scratches, sometimes even bite marks by my hand. It looked as if someone bit me with teeth on my hand, and what do you call it? But it wasn't they didn't hurt or anything. It just looked like indentions on my hand, bite mark. And,
because they're known to leave physical marks too, anything spiritual things, because they want you to know they're there. They want you to know, hey, we're here, but because they know the people out there. You could have a giant 666 carved into your chest, and people still would believe that it's not spiritual. They'll still believe you must have did it yourself or somebody else. You know what I mean? But the spirit world, they want you to know they're there. They want you to know, hey, you don't obey, and they try to intimidate you. But when you come to Christ, you see how fast they turn from the bullies into the little cowards that they are.
Yeah, and it was just like you were saying that one day whenever we talked, how a lot of these people that do work in these tattoo shops, not saying that all of them are bad, but a lot of them do work with the craft and stuff.
Yeah.
And they do stuff to the ink. And like the one on my chest, the whole reason why I had got it covered was it was something simple. It was literally it says every man needs a muse, and it was literally just from a song. But even the girl that did it, she was like, oh, that's all you want? And I was like, add your own touch to it though, and add your own art style and stuff. So she drew this bottle and stuff, and next to it, and almost looked just like a beer bottle, like a Dos Equis bottle pretty much. It was green, and I didn't really think anything of it. And it wasn't until it was about a year later, and even after the tattoo, oh my gosh, so much weird stuff was happening, and everything was just going bad, and it was just constant. But after it was a few years later, I was researching, and then I found out about numerology, and it's the meaning of letters into numbers. And then what was on the bottle were these 3 little X's across the bottle, and I never even thought anything of it, I even thought, most, because it looked like a beer bottle pretty much. Most movies, back in the day, they would have, the X's on the bottle and stuff.
Yeah.
Representing that it was, a wine bottle or something. But when I looked into numerology, the X, it stands for 6. So pretty much there were 3 6s on my chest. And then even, when I got it covered up, like so much other weird stuff was happening. I even told her about it too, like the day I was covering up, because she was also dating my cousin at the time. And I told him about it, and then he like told her, and she like lost it over me like covering just, it's not like I covered up the whole tattoo. I just covered up those X's, like I blacked them out. And she like lost it over it, of me just blacking that piece out. And like, I was like, if it's not that, like, if it doesn't, because she was even like trying to argue with me saying that it didn't mean that. And I was like, well, if it didn't mean that, why are you like so angry about me like blacking it out?
Yeah.
Why you have negative reaction towards it if it's not that important?
Yeah, exactly. After even I told them like my morals and reasons for like getting it removed and stuff, they like still like lost it over it.
Yeah, and the ink, like, because a lot of big tattoo places, they have copyright in the inks with the ingredients. They don't have to disclose what they put in, and I think they should, because it should be an FDA issue, but they don't. And we do know a lot of people blatantly wide open to tell people we're occultists. That's why you see some tattoo places sin on skin or have some kind of a devil or something like occultic or satanic, like openly displaying, and a lot of these people are into the occult. And we're not saying all tattoo artists are evil. We're not. Just a lot of them are, and they openly display their beliefs. And we truly believe that they do incantations. That's praying over something multiple times, or chanting a ritual or spell over, or putting some kind of a questionable ingredient that can open like some kind of a gateway or a stronghold on your physical body, because your body to God is the temple. This is God's temple, your temple, and you're supposed to take care of it. That's why it warns. And it's not God being I want to let people know this, sorry, because God says don't get tattoos, or God says don't do this, don't do that. Well, he's not being a controlling jerk when he tells you not to do these things, because he's doing this for a very, very physically and spiritual reason. There's spiritual ramifications that come along with these things. This is what I got to earlier when I was talking about the last video about the churches lacking to teach spiritual warfare. Now, if the people knew, because if you got a young kid that goes into the church, oh, don't get a tattoo, it's a sin. Like, screw that in the rebellion age, you know what I mean? If you tell them why, maybe more than likely they'll go back, well, wow, that's why. You know what I mean? Tell them why. Like, thou shalt not commit adultery. Tell them why. The Bible says why. Thou shalt not lay with another man, because it does attack DNA. It rips DNA apart and changes your genome and all that. And no, it's to do with spiritual ramifications with the change in the corruption of the bloodlines and all that. There's a lot of stuff involved. God says don't do these things for a reason, a physical and spiritual, huge reason. He's not being a jerk. He's telling you to do this for your own good. It's like you when you're a kid, right? You see the kids across the street that the parents don't care about them. They cross the street all the time, and you want to cross the street by yourself, and your parent goes, no, don't you dare go near that street. And they're very firm. And you like, my parents are unfair, they're unfair, until the day you see your friend, God forbid, get hit by a car. Oh, that's why my father didn't want me to cross the street by myself. Oh, that's why. And you actually see something like that, even though your father told you could get hit by a car, but you see your friends do it, and you think it's unfair. And you see one day, God forbid, somebody gets hit by a car, you're like, wow, okay, thank you, Dad, for protecting me. And when you grow up, you realize later, then you're like, thank you, Dad, for protecting me and being on my case, not to do these stupid things. You know what I mean? So that's why, because we're children of God. That's why God has these rules and regulations, not to be a jerk, but for our own reasoning. But we got a couple minutes left here, so if you guys want to finish up here and do the sake of time, and those of you who are watching the video now, it keeps cutting in and out. It's like on the Facebook there, but we are recording this, and we're going to put it on. It's all going to be interrupted because it keeps getting interrupted on Facebook. We're having a lot of problems today technically. That's for the ghetto set up here. Anyway, but yeah, guys, finish up, and we're going to have you back on. And Leo, if you want to join me tomorrow night, we're going to be interviewing Hugh Francis Squire. He's a huge. 3 of his wives were killed by the government, and they're attacking this guy constantly. And so if you want to join me tomorrow night, you're more than welcome.
This is fun. If we can figure out a way to do this again tomorrow night, I'll definitely do. But hitting home, I think you hit the nail on the head when you were talking about earlier with the dad analogy and, warning you not to cross the street and things like that. By the way, here's the crazy thing too, and I know we only have a couple minutes left to end this show, but you know, you ever notice that a lot of people, they believe in ghosts, they believe in aliens, they believe in magic, they believe in voodoo, they believe in all these different things, right? But somehow, whenever you start talking about God, they freak out. So there's a possibility that the entity is out there, but it's like everything but God. Just anybody listening to that, really think about that. Be honest with yourself. That's what it comes down to. Be honest with yourself. What do you think? What in your mind is stopping you from accepting that? If you can accept that magic exists in this world, if Satanism exists in this world, if aliens exist in this world, why never God? So be honest with yourself, okay? And Dan was talking about the analogy. I'm going to get to that with you know, being the dad figure there. That is God's love. God's love can be tough love. Okay, that's a lot of people don't realize that he's just watching out for you. Yep. You know, sometimes it seems like he's being a dictator and he's being oppressive and whatever. And it's like, no, he sees everything ahead of time. Remember, God's outside of time. He already knows what you're going to do before you were going to do. Yep. You were set out before the foundations of the earth. Okay. You know, you still have free will. God never took that away from you. Some people can't get their head around that. Well, if God knows what I'm going to do at every single minute, how do I still have free will? It's because he already knew the decision you would make before you were even born. Okay? So, if I hope that answers some questions with people about that. And I don't want to take too much time away because this show was more about the targeted individual you two here, Jake. And Jake, did you want to help us close out the show and just kind of talk to people and then maybe give some warnings out there?
Definitely a big warning. If you do mess with psychedelics, stop immediately. Yeah. Don't do it. You're opening up yourself to entities that, like, you don't know what you're messing with. Like, so you just should not do it. Especially if you obviously, like, don't know how to, like, combat them, which is, there's only one way, and it's through God. And obviously don't mess with the craft or get involved with people that mess with it, because like, it's nothing but bad news.
Yeah. Amen to that.
Amen, brother. All right, Jake, thank you for joining us, man. And Leo, thanks.
Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely, and we'll be in touch with you and all that. And you guys stay right there because we'll talk after this. But yeah, everybody, thank you for joining us on the Truth Radio Show on our Facebook Live edition. Right now it's being recorded. We're going to put it up on YouTube in Brighton, which I want people to go. It was known as Real.video, but it's called Brighton now, Brighton.com. It's an alternative to YouTube because people like us have been getting deleted and shut down left and right by YouTube because the political pansy far-left people don't like truth. So they like to delete us, and I'm lucky, they're lucky I'm still on Facebook. I mean, I don't want to get to that. But anyway, tomorrow night we're going to be joined by Hugh Francis Squire. 3 of his wives were killed by the feds, and there's so much, anything from the occult to corrupt. I mean, it's very deep what's going to go on. And we're also, this week, hopefully, we're going to interview a person I know. He's going to be, his identity is going to be covered too, but he was an ex-Satanist most of his life. He was in high levels of Satanism, and he wants to tell all. He's a Christian now. Thankfully, I was one of the people that helped him out of it. And so he wants to tell all and bring his testimony to people. And I contacted another individual who actually has been to hell. He was clinically deaf, 38 minutes, whatever it was. I forgot it was. And but I contacted him, and hopefully he'll be joining us on the show. We got a bunch of people lined up. But anyway, guys, thank you for joining us. This is Dan Bidondi, TruthRadioShow.com. Hit me up at Twitter at Dan Bidondi, and Truth Radio Show on Brighton.com as well. And take care, guys. Thank you.
Declaring war on the New World Order. TruthRadioShow.com.